Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard. You're listening to a special bonus episode. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and this is the last installment of our podcast sabbatical of sorts. It has been so much fun to bring you all of these interviews from other hosts on their podcasts. And today I'm going to be bringing you the most recent interview that I did. It was actually from the first week of January. For those of you that don't know Nicole Abboud, she is always up to so many different amazing things. She is such a creative, and she started the Gen Y Lawyer podcast. It's been very, very well received. It's very popular. I'm sure you've heard of it. Well, she decided to take a bit of a sabbatical herself, and so she handed over the reins for a while, and there was another host. She came back as the host this year in January. I believe my interview was the first one with her back. So lots of fun with that. And it was all about how to really, set your vision for the year, how to go after your goals. So this was actually episode 173. And the title of it is, What is Your Vision and Will You Chase It Down? So here's the thing. I've heard people say there's nothing magical about the beginning of January. And the truth is there is something magical about the beginning of January. It's quite magical, in fact, but I get their point and I 100% agree with it, which is please don't just use the first week of January as the time to set your goals. You can start anew anytime and you can create your own magic anytime. So if maybe you've not been focusing on your goals for the year, maybe you did the Get It Done challenge and you're already back to your old ways, right? And you're like, I really need to get back to focusing on my goals and getting things done. Okay, if that's the case, you're going to love this bonus interview because even though it was about setting yourself up for 2019, we're now almost 5 months in, right? And don't throw in the towel now. Maybe you need to double down. Maybe you just want to go ahead and set goals to begin with. But we talk about one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about, which is not just going after goals for goals, but really knowing what your vision is and making sure that they are aligned so that all of your daily actions, your weekly actions align with what you're really wanting to achieve short-term and long-term. And so that's what we're talking about today in this episode from the Gen Y Lawyer. So the only thing that we have edited out on this relates to some ads, simply because they're ads for her show, not my show, but otherwise you are getting it uncut. It is the entire episode with her intros and outros. And I just want to give a special shout out and a thank you to all of these amazing women who agreed to republish their episodes here on the podcast. I hear a lot about how women are, can be cutthroat and competitive in a way that, holds each other back. And that's really not my experience. And I think it's important that we highlight that and share that far more than the other. So, I reached out to these women and said, hey, would you be willing to republish on my podcast? And that's not typical. You don't see that too much. And, to some degree, you could argue, well, that's going to take away downloads from them, or, it's taking their content and using it as my own. Granted, I got permission, but I just think that it shows how collaborative we can all be. And my personal experience, which is that women really do want to support and help each other. So thank you to all of them for agreeing to have their episodes, their podcasts republished here on Hustle and Flow. And hopefully you are thankful for that as well. You have enjoyed that as well. And if you are not currently a subscriber to their podcasts, I highly encourage you to go do so, not just to support them, but because their content and their material is so great. All right, so let's get to the interview today with Nicole. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Gen Y Lawyer podcast, where we're exploring what it looks like to build a meaningful career and life as a millennial lawyer. I'm Nicole Abboud, your host for today, and we're talking about how you can kickstart the year by setting your vision and goals for the year and implementing a strategy to attack those goals and just be in a better place in your life. So thank you so much for starting off the year with me by tuning in. Karima is not joining us in this particular episode. And if you're wondering why, where she went, why I'm here, you're just completely disoriented when you press play for some reason, then please go ahead and check out the bonus episode that I actually published this week along with this episode. I explain everything in the bonus episode, and actually that only shows up to people who are subscribed. So if you don't see it, then you are probably not officially a subscriber. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and you'll get that bonus episode. So seeing that it is the beginning of a brand new year, assuming you're listening to this episode right when it airs, I thought it would be the perfect time to talk about clarifying our visions and laying down some goals, and then learning how we can fiercely chase after them like the badasses that we are. Whether you already set your intentions for the year and you're just kind of working on them slowly right now, or you are just now getting around to thinking about the year ahead, because I totally understand the holidays were nuts, so you finally have a second to breathe. It is never too late to learn how to properly align your goals for the year with your vision for your life and your career. Whether you are thinking about adding a new practice area to your law practice or transitioning to a new job or leaving the law altogether, I'm hoping this episode gives you the action plan to actually follow through, and then also gives you the courage to do it, because you're going to hear from an amazing guest who helps lawyers do this every single day. Joining me today is attorney, speaker, author, and personal and professional development strategic coach, Heather Hubbard. After practicing in big law for over a decade, Heather left to launch her coaching and consulting company. Now she works with lawyers to equip them and empower them with the tools and resources they need to succeed. All right, let's get to the good stuff. Here's my conversation with Heather. I was reading on your website a little bit about how you help the lawyers that you work with. And You wrote that you help lawyers who have, high achieving attorneys who have reached the pinnacle in their careers, however they define that, who have reached the top, but they feel trapped. They kind of feel stuck. Can we talk a little bit about what causes lawyers to feel trapped when they've kind of reached the top, once they've reached their goals and achieved the highest level that they've been aiming to achieve? What's this trapped feeling?
Yeah. And sometimes people feel trapped right before they even get to that point. But I think part of it is where we are high achieving and we just keep going after the thing that's right in front of us. We fail to realize sometimes that the thing right in front of us may not be what we really want. So there's some of that. I think too, the longer you practice, it's really easy to get bored. So you may be, great at litigating or doing a certain type of transactional deal, but there comes a point when it's like, I really like learning, and this is no longer new and creative and fun. It's just demanding and boring, even though I'm working all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I think part of it is just, when you get to a certain point, especially in big law, you might get to the point where you were doing great, because when you're an associate, you're kind of on this lockstep system, and then you make partner and the rules change. And when the rules change, it's almost as if someone pulls the rug out from under you, especially for women and minorities, because suddenly the people that you were always on pace with start to pass you by. And it can be really, really frustrating, and you get angry. And you start to think, well, I don't even know if I can succeed anymore. And if this is the best I can do, is it worth it? Mm-hmm. So I just think there's so many different things, right, that go into it. But it's just it can be such a grueling and demanding industry. So, if you're not really getting a lot out of it, you can totally feel trapped, especially, with those golden handcuffs.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's not something that's just particular to big law associates. I speak with a lot of solos who, even though they've had the opportunity to build their own practice, sometimes they feel stuck as well, or turned out not to be what they wanted, or they're even bored, like you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or, right. So I talk to a lot of solos too, that they start their own firm and they thought it was going to be something in particular, right? And maybe they've been doing it for 5 years or 10 years. And they're just like, I work all the time and I'm not making the money I wanted to make. I don't feel like my clients appreciate me. And it can be lonely. But we feel like, well, I went to law school. I got this degree. It's what's expected of me. I may even still have student loans. It's part of my identity. How could I ever do anything else? Or how could I ever change my practice or anything like that? We just get to a point where we feel like we have to live with the decisions we've made, as opposed to realizing that every day is a new opportunity to do with it what we want.
Yes, I love that you said that. I think that's something my listeners definitely need to hear. And the reason I wanted to start there with that question or with that topic was because we are at the beginning of the year, right? We're in the beginning of 2019. And this is really a time when a lot of people start to reflect on their life choices, their career choices, their goals, right? If they didn't already do that back in November or December, now is a great time to do it. So with that in mind, I thought, let's go ahead and talk about what lawyers should be doing right now if they are either experiencing that trapped feeling or they're lacking fulfillment in their careers or they love what they do. What can we be doing in January to start setting some goals for the year that we can start working towards?
Yeah. Okay. So this is like my favorite thing to do ever. I am a goal setting junkie. You really want to start with your vision. And I see so many attorneys making that mistake. And it's part of why you can reach your goals and still not be happy. Okay. So you really, really, really have to start with that vision of, what do I want? And so a lot of attorneys will say, well, I don't even know. I don't even know what I want. Or they don't give themselves permission to really think about what they want for many different reasons. But you've got to give yourself the permission to just be creative, to just daydream about what you might possibly want. And if you're like, I don't even know where to start, fine. Put the career to the side for a moment and say, well, what does that perfect day look like to me? What is it that I'm really craving? What am I wanting more of? Or what am I wanting less of? And it could be that you're wanting more free time. It could be you're wanting more time with family. Maybe you're wanting a change of scenery, right? Like maybe you're wanting to be in a different home or a different city. Just giving yourself permission to be creative and play, that in and of itself is going to help you. Because if you know how you want to feel, or how you want to spend your time, that in and of itself can help you figure out exactly what it is you're wanting. But it's also okay if there's a particular title or a certain amount of money that you're wanting to make, but really that big integrated picture of every part of your life and your legal career or non-legal career. Getting clear on that is really, really important.
So when you're working with clients, helping them set their goals for the year, do you usually put any kind of limitations on it, or do you just tell them dream big, go wild, write down anything and everything you want? Yeah.
So step one is going as big as possible. And so some people can really only do a year or two. Others can do, they can go really far out. And like on StrengthsFinder, I'm futuristic. So I can do that. Like I can go 20, 30 years out, no problem.
Wow.
Some people can't. So I just say, do what's comfortable for you. If you can only go out 12 months, that's fine. If you can go out 5 years, that's great. You've just got to do what's most comfortable for you, where you can say, this is really where I want to be at some point.
So that sounds like a fun exercise, right? So a lot of people will be able to sit down and just brain dump everything their heart desires, everything they want to do. For others, it's a really scary thought. It's almost debilitating to think that, wow, the world is our oyster. We really can do anything. But because it's so overwhelming, we feel like we can't really do it. So,
that's right.
I mean, how do you encourage people to really open up and write down what they want and truly explore what their goals are?
Yeah. So for people that struggle with this concept and they're like, I literally have no idea, I encourage them to do vision boards. And I think a lot of times when we think of vision boards, we think of, once I have my goals, I go get pictures and words that support that to help me stay focused. I actually do it a totally different way. And that is that you try to come to the vision board making process with a clean slate. You are not bringing anything to the table, no preconceived notions. And you get magazines. Those still exist. There's not as many as there used to be, but they still exist. And it doesn't matter what they are. Like, it can be any magazine out there, and you pull it out and you're going to look at it from a totally different perspective. You just look at what words speak to me, what pictures speak to me. I don't have to have a reason why. And you just go through it and you cut and you rip out and you just do that for a while until, you've got a decent stack of things. And then you just kind of spread it out in front of you. And then you're like, okay, now what's still speaking to me? Again, you're not trying to force anything. You've got to, you're not thinking about it with your lawyer brain. Mm-hmm. You're thinking about it from just what moves me, what's speaking to me. And then you keep working through it. And then you basically, I paste it down on I do it like 11 by 14. Size doesn't really matter on this. You just paste it down. And then when you look at it, it often will tell you what your heart and what your soul is really craving. I love doing this exercise with people that tell me that they have no idea what they want, mm-hmm. or they'll tell me that they think they may want a certain thing. And then they finish this exercise and they're like, wow, I never would have told you that was what I was wanting more of. And I don't even believe that's what I'm wanting more of. I'm like, great. It was still a fun exercise, but they always come back and they're like, you know what? You're right. I had someone, I know I'm being really long-winded on this. I had someone who really struggled with this. It took her a long time. She was completely shocked with what she came up with. She thought it was weird. And fast forward, and by the way, it had a lot to do with her faith, and it had a lot to do with children. And fast forward 12 months, and she went on I think it was like a 2-week mission aid trip. And that was never even on her radar.
Wow.
And she was like, it was so fulfilling. So it's like, it had nothing even to do with her career, but focusing on what, was really calling out to her allowed her to just be more fulfilled, which allowed her to, enjoy everything more. So mm-hmm. That's what I would recommend.
Yes. And I love that. I know that vision boarding is something that a lot of people really buy into. They really love it. And I actually, as we're doing this interview, I'm staring at my vision board. It's right in front of me. And I actually do, I update it maybe like once or twice a year, because sometimes mm-hmm. sometimes it's just a 6-month board. But for people who aren't, I guess, visually inclined or who don't want to sit and do this exercise, I mean, even writing these things down, just writing down everything that you really want to accomplish, that you want to do, whether it's within your reach or not, I think that's fine too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have an idea of what we want to accomplish, whether we think it's wild or we can actually accomplish it within the next 12 months or 5 years or whatever timeline we gave ourselves. What's the next step? So, I mean, it's great to look at these pictures or to think about our goals, but how do we start taking action?
Okay. So once you have we're not ready to take action, but once you have your vision, okay, this is going to be easy. It's where you want to go. Mm-hmm. You then have to say, where am I now? Where am I now compared to where I want to be? And I know this sounds really simple, but a lot of people don't do this. So you have to then really just do a check-in. You have to do an audit. And this is where it needs to be aligned with what that vision is. So let's say that part of the vision involves a change of scenery, right? Mm-hmm. Then you would say, okay, well, apparently and let's say we're not doing a vision board. Let's say you want to move to California one day. Okay. And right now, that's not where you live. So where you are now is, and I'm, again, just making stuff up, I'm in Colorado, but I know I want to go to California. It's as simple as documenting that. For people that envision themselves working out every single day and, being a certain, weight or whatever, you would document, well, I now exercise once a week, mm-hmm. and this is what I weigh. Oh, I want that job or I want to make that much money. Here's the job I have now. Again, super simple, but you just want to start lining it up. So it's where do I want to be and where am I right now? It's just being really honest with yourself. Then when you know where you are, where you want to be and you know where you are, then you can start really working what I call the strategy, which is okay, so how am I going to get there? What is the path of least resistance? Because you can't tackle all of those things all at once.
Okay.
And so this is where if you were going to climb a mountain, using all kinds of analogies today, if you're going to climb a mountain, you might say, I want to get to the top as fast as I can, or I want the most scenic route. I want this to be adventurous. And so you're like, I'm just going to climb straight up. And you might say, actually, I'm scared of heights and I'm not in great shape, but I still want to get there. So I'm going to take this path that takes a lot longer, but I'm going to feel great about it in the process. This is where you really have to individualize your strategy. So based on where you are now compared to where you want to be and what that path looks like for you so that it feels good to you, you then start developing the strategy. And what I like to do when I'm developing strategy is really look for common themes. Okay. So if you changed one thing or you focused on one thing and it could impact many different things, then that's going to be more important than just a small one. So for an example on that, let's say health is really important to you this year. Health always tends to be one of those things that people put on their list. So that's why I'm using it as an example.
It's on mine. So
yep.
It's good.
Okay. So if health, right? Like if feeling better, if, knowing you've got longevity, if all of those things related to your health impact your ability to, be more focused or more productive at work or, helps you spend more time outside playing with your kids, whatever that looks like, then that might be a great theme for you. But if you really get out a piece of paper or you've got a whiteboard or something and you're mapping this out where it's like, here I am now, this is where I want to be. What are some common themes that might move the needle on a few different areas? That often is your best strategy for zeroing in on the goals that are going to, one, help you make progress towards your overall vision. Mm-hmm. But two, it's going to help you stay focused. It's going to help you be motivated. And it's going to help you enjoy the present moment more. I see the biggest mistake I see people make at the beginning of the year is they start coming up with this big list of shoulds. I should be doing this, right? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's not even going to make you happy because it's not aligned with your overall vision. It's just for whatever reason, we think that the new year is a great time to beat ourselves up and think we're going to become totally different people for no good reason other than we need to improve ourselves.
Yeah. Very true. So I guess kind of along those same lines, is it something like if someone sets the goal of wanting to double the amount of clients that they bring in that year? So they usually bring in 50 new cases. They want to bring in 100, but maybe 100 would just make them so busy that they don't even have time to spend with their families or doing anything extracurricular. Would you say that's the kind of goal that's not really aligned?
Exactly. Because you got to look at that whole big picture. Yeah. And so if you're like, okay, I can focus on business development or getting these 100 clients, right? Mm-hmm. But I suddenly see that is going to impact all of these other things, like in a negative way, then I'm going to adjust my strategy. Maybe if I'm not going to build out a team that's going to help me, then that's not really a good goal for me because it's going to be counterproductive.
Right. Yeah, I think that's key. Then recognizing that, okay, if that is the goal, how do you make it more aligned with your values? So do you need to hire someone to help you? What's another route you can take to get there?
Yes, it's like a puzzle. I mean, the thing is, attorneys are great problem solvers, but when it comes to our own stuff, it's so personal and we're so close to it that we tend to not be that great at actually putting the pieces together. So I always think that when you put it on paper or you try to do it visually in a way that is not like typical goal setting, it actually helps you see it in a different way and allows you to do more of the problem solving that you typically would for someone else.
Right. So I'm thinking for people who can write what goals they want to achieve. They can write down where they are now. For a lot of people, that line between where they are now and where they want to be isn't very clear. So they can't necessarily even come up with the strategy. They can't think of what they need to do to get those extra 50 clients a year. How would you recommend someone go about doing that? Should they reach out for help? Should they do some research online? Like what else they can be doing to bring in those clients or whatever goal they're trying to achieve?
Yeah. So, once you've got the strategy set, that's when I then say, okay, so now you choose your goals. So as opposed to the goals and the vision being the same thing, and hopefully that makes sense. But once you have the goal set, there can still be sub-strategy within that. So let's say that your overall strategy or your overall theme is just to get more clients. Mm-hmm. So then you would start brainstorming, okay, what are the different ways that I can get more clients? And you might have some good ideas, or you might say, you know what, I've tried everything and nothing works. Or, I've tried these things and I've not had great results. Well, there you kind of have to be honest with yourself. Have you really been tracking? Like, do you really know if it's working, or is it just you've been trying so many things, you've just been throwing spaghetti at the wall that you literally have no idea what works and what doesn't?
Right.
If that's the case, then you definitely, you need to do one of two things. One is you need to hire some kind of business coach to help you, or you need to just pick one or two of those things that you've been trying before as opposed to 20 and really double down on those for at least a quarter, maybe 6 months to see if hiring someone in that specific area helps you. Because sometimes it's just that you're doing so many different things that you're just diluting your results because you're diluting your efforts. Right. And suddenly when you just focus on Facebook, right? Or you just focus on speaking and you get rid of all the other crap, that in and of itself may be the answer. Mm-hmm. Or it could just be that you're doing the right things. Maybe you're already only doing 2 or 3 things, but you need a little help with it, right? So it's like, I'm getting a little traction, but not enough. Then that's where, you totally want to invest, and you and I are both service providers. So we like to see people invest in themselves because we like to see them get results. But for people that are like, I can't do that. I don't have the money. I'm just starting out. They can totally get on podcasts, right? Like they can listen to our podcasts. Mm-hmm. They can read blogs. But get focused, right? Just listen to podcasts on Facebook. Just read articles on Facebook so that you can really try to focus as much as possible. It's when you try to be a jack of all trades and like you've got a million tactics. Every podcast you listen to, you're trying every tactic out. Please stop.
Oh, man.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that is definitely great advice. And, this, for the past few months, I've been applying this concept, I guess, if you want to call it that, to decisions that I've been making. And it's really, it stems from a guy named Derek Sivers. And he said that if something is not a heck yes, it's a no. Yeah. And I'm really trying to apply that. And I used to say yes to a lot of things and I'd end up wasting time or not putting my efforts where they need to go. So from here on, it's all about, if it doesn't excite me, if it's not a guaranteed heck yes, I'm just going to say no to it.
Absolutely. Well, and so this is why I say when you come up with a plan, you need to be looking at it every single month. You need to review your vision every single month, not because your vision should be changing every single month, but we sometimes forget the big picture and we forget, what am I really aiming for? Like, where am I really trying to take my life and my career? And reading that vision every month helps you have discernment around those decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And then each month, if you know, okay, here's my strategy. And here are, like, I always say you should never have more than 3 goals a month because you're just not going to accomplish them. The fewer goals you have, the more likely you are to, knock them out of the park. Right. So if you then write down, so in the planner, I have you write down no more than 3 goals. And every week when you plan, you have to look at those 3 goals. So if opportunities come in the door, or if you're wanting to suddenly focus on something else just because it feels better to do something easy as opposed to where you're pushing yourself, you got to look back at it. Mm-hmm. And if it's not aligned, then it means it's a heck no. that's how you make progress, is you keep it all aligned all the time.
Yes. I cannot stress the importance of just staying focused, because it can get so easy to get distracted with things that might appear to be opportunities, but they aren't. And I guess it's on the individual person to assess whether it is or isn't an opportunity. But staying focused, and like you said, just always reviewing your goals, always staying focused on what is going to lead you there, what's going to get you closer. You actually mentioned your planner, which is the Life and Law Planner.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about that and how that's helping lawyers with their goals in their daily lives.
Yeah. So the very first thing that I did when I started my company 4 years ago was I had this course called Goals Reimagined, and it no longer exists, but because it's kind of transformed into something else.
It's been reimagined.
It has totally been reimagined. I love it. Yes. But I've always been teaching my planning system, because people are like, how have you been able to achieve so much? And it's all about being focused. And I've always followed this system just because, like, it's just what I've done. And it didn't occur to me that it was a system, right? So it's what I always teach on how people can get focused. And every year people are like, well, what planner should I use? And I'm like, well, I kind of piecemeal things together. And finally I was just like, I'm just going to put one together myself. So basically it forces you to do the limited goals at the beginning of the month. Mm-hmm. It's a combination of like a weekly planner and a daily planner for people that even understand planners. So it's not really about like just scheduling appointments and just taking your to-do list. Like, just go get, any planner at
Walmart.
Exactly, if that's what you want. This is about like, how do you stay focused? So if you've got the like goals, then every single week you look at how much availability you think you're going to have or that you're going to commit to, and you map out the projects that support those goals. And then each day you map out the tasks, the priority tasks that help you meet the project. So it really chunks it down so that you can never like sit down at your desk and say, oh, that seems too overwhelming. I'm going to get on Amazon or scroll Facebook instead. Mm-hmm. Like, you can easily knock it out. And when you make those tiny little steps each and every day, that adds up big time.
Yeah.
So that's what the planner is.
There's been like an explosion of planners over the last few years. And I think people are realizing the importance of having some kind of system in place or some kind of guidance that they can participate in, so they can write their goals, their daily goals, their weekly, monthly goals. So I love that you created one that not only has worked for you, but now is helping lawyers as well. Like, it's very specific to the legal profession, right?
Yeah. And I actually had someone that I work with. I have her kind of help some of my clients, and she's been on my podcast. Her name is Cindy Sullivan. She did this test for like all these attorneys that were my listeners and my clients. And turns out almost everyone that tested on it, like we've got terrible time awareness. And what that means is we think something will take a certain amount of time, and we're like not even close. Like, wow. We're terrible.
Wait, that's so interesting. What does that mean? Like, how did you even test for that?
I can't remember how she asks you questions, right?
Okay.
But like everybody scored really, really low on it. And what that means is like, so someone might say, okay, I've got this motion for summary judgment. I can knock this out, in 3 hours today. And it ends up taking them 3 days.
Wow. Okay.
So if you're doing fixed fees, right? Like, that shows in and of itself not good, because you don't actually know how to budget. It also shows if you have any kind of support staff, you might be thinking, oh, I can do it faster, when turns out you actually have no idea that you were spending the same amount of time. You just thought that you were faster.
Okay.
So we built in this, like, within the lines, right? So there's like the priority tasks, and then there's additional tasks under that you'd like to get done, but may not get done. And then you write it out. And then at the beginning of the day, you estimate how much time each task is going to take. Mm-hmm. And then like, once you start it, you've got to pay attention. And then when you finish it, you have to write down how long it actually took.
Okay.
Yeah. And like all the attorneys that were in my beta group, my test group on this, they were like, that just changed my life, because I had no idea that I genuinely have no idea how long it takes me to do things.
Right.
So we overcommit. We say we can do all these things. We write down a gazillion things we're going to accomplish each day. And it's not possible because, one, phone calls come in, emails come in. But two, turns out like it takes us longer to do things than we think.
No, it's so true. And you know what? That's actually a great lesson to kind of keep in mind as the listener goes through the exercises that you shared with us today in terms of setting goals and trying to reach them, to be realistic about how long something might take. So how would you recommend we audit ourselves or assess our progress? Should it be every week? Should it be every month or every quarter? How do we know if we're actually moving in the right direction or making any kind of progress?
Yeah. So I always encourage people to use KPIs. So for those in the business world, they've probably heard of it. Many maybe haven't. So they're just key performance indicators. And what that means is you're tracking your performance, not the results. So the reason why I always try to use the example, like you think of like fundraisers. Have you ever seen a fundraiser somewhere where it's always like that thermometer, right? Like, and it keeps rising. Yeah. They rise, the bar keeps going up to have you met your goal. Well, all it tells you is whether or not like how close you are to reaching the goal. It doesn't give you any information as to whether or not you're going to reach the goal, right? Like, is it going to happen? So instead, what you need to be tracking are the things that are most likely going to impact it. So in that instance, and you have to kind of know yourself, and you might have to test a few things, but it could be, well, the way that you get most of your donations, maybe it's based on how many phone calls you make each day. So as opposed to tracking how many donations did I receive, you should be tracking how many phone calls did I make.
Okay.
So it's something like that. So with like, let's give two examples that might make a little bit more sense for your listeners. Let's say it is a health goal, as opposed to how much do I weigh each day or how much do I weigh each week? Depending on what your strategy is, it may be how many times did I go to the gym, or it might be how many calories did I eat, right? Like whatever, again, strategy you come up with, you want to track the performance piece. If it's business development, right? So let's say, I want to get 50 new clients and my strategy is going to be Facebook. Okay. Well, it's not how many new clients you got. It might be how many times did I post? It might be how often did I review my analytics? So it's whatever you think might actually move, like whatever your action is that is going to likely impact that goal, like whether or not you reach it, that's what you want to track. And I encourage people to track that on a weekly basis, because if you do it on a weekly basis and you see that you're not actually doing the work that's going to move the needle forward, you will see that you're probably not going to reach your goal. Because it's so easy to fill up your day with busy work that makes you think you're making progress, but it's really just tricking you. Because maybe you watched an hour worth of YouTube training on Facebook, and maybe you spent 4 hours coming up with, posts on Facebook, but you didn't actually post anything. Right?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Then it's like, that's the issue. Or maybe you didn't, you're not actually putting the CTAs out there, or you're not actually, asking people to follow you. You've got to look at the performance that's going to help you reach the goal. And then every month you want to do a check-in on whether or not that's when you look at the numbers, right? That's when you actually say, did I make progress on the goal as opposed to the performance?
Okay. I like that. I like focusing on the performance, at least in the short term, so on a weekly basis, and then the results from a much bigger perspective. So that's a month, a quarter, 6 months, whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
So before we kind of round out this conversation, you also have a podcast, which you kind of referenced a little bit earlier. It's called Hustle and Flow. Yep. So tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's a great resource that our listeners will want to check out and see if they want to start listening.
Yeah. So every topic is either related to hustle or flow. So hustle topics include things like, business development, goals and time management, practice management, that kind of thing. And then the flow piece is, conversations around mindfulness, going on vacation, being a workaholic, trying to reduce your stress, things like that. So hustle comes easy to me, flow not so much. But I know just how important it is. So I talk about the flow mostly for myself. Yeah. And I think others need to hear it too. So that's what it's about.
Well, and it's a great show, and I highly recommend the listeners go and check it out as an additional resource and to just hear more, well, from you, but also hear more about the topics that we covered today. For people who manage to kind of sit down and write down their goals and start, and then breaking them down into the different steps, they write down their strategy and they start working towards those goals. And say they achieve one or a few of them, how would you recommend they celebrate their wins?
Okay, it is so important that we celebrate because we tend to always move on to the next thing, right? We're like, hit that, time for the next thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's so dependent on each individual. For me, it's nice to go to dinner or buy myself something, but I'm not as motivated by that as I am about just sharing it with others, right? Mm. And part of that is because, I think as lawyers, we can be competitive, but I also think, especially for women, sometimes we hold back, right? And we keep things for ourselves. We don't want to be boastful. We don't want people to think, oh, who does she think she is? But I feel like when we work really hard and reach a goal, we need to share it so that other people can celebrate with us. And so that we can all keep giving each other permission to keep going for what we want. Sometimes I think in a weird way, being ambitious gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
And so I think sharing it, I always encourage when clients have wins, I want them to share them in Facebook groups. I want them, and you do a great job of that in your Facebook group, of asking people to share their wins, because we need to be owning it and not being, embarrassed or, feeling like we have to keep that stuff to ourselves. So I think we all need to be rooting for each other.
Right. Exactly. I love that attitude. So, Heather, how can people find a little bit more about you aside from checking out your podcast? How can they get in touch with you?
My website is heatherjoyhubbard.com. So you can come over there, but I love Instagram. Mm-hmm. So that's my favorite place to hang out. So come hang out with me there. That's also Heather Joy Hubbard. And send me a DM. Talk to me on my Instagram stories, right? I like to have conversations.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. Great. So I'll have that information listed in the show notes. For the listeners, Heather, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today and walking us through setting goals for the new year and just kind of tackling them head on. I feel excited to go and work through this exercise and just jot down a few things of my own, a few goals of my own. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Nicole. And I hope you have a fabulous 2019.
All right. Thank you again for listening up until this point. I know only dedicated listeners are still around, so thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed what Heather had to say about setting your vision and laying down a strategy to achieve your goals and ultimately reach that vision.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Like I said, we will be back with a brand new episode on June 4th. We are skipping next week for Memorial Day. And one last reminder, if you want to participate in one of the 2 mastermind options this summer, enrollment closes on May 31. So this is your very last chance to even find out what that's all about. The only way to get that information is to be on the interest form. If you've not filled that out yet, go to legalmasterminds.com, scroll to the very bottom, click the button that says fill out the interest form, do that, and we will then email you with the details. Again, it is focused on business development. So if you're interested in doing that over the summer, I would absolutely love to work with you. All right, that's it. I will see you soon. I am super excited to announce that the Life and Law Planner is officially here. It is more than just a calendar. It is a full planning system. If you want to take back your days, your weeks, your months, and your year, order your planner now. It will completely change your life and help you accomplish your biggest goals. There's only a limited quantity available, so go to lifeandlawplanner.com and order yours today.